Welcome to Therapy in the Great Outdoors, the podcast where we explore the business and practice of nature-based pediatric therapy of all kinds. If you're an outdoor-loving pediatric practitioner in the fields of occupational, physical, or speech therapy, social work, or mental health, this podcast will help you start and grow a successful nature-based practice or program. I am the ever honest, always 100% real, you'll hear it all on this podcast, Dr. Laura Park Figueroa. I'm a pediatric OT with over 20 years of experience, and I run a thriving nature-based practice with profitable locations in 2 different states and multi-six figures in revenue. I also host the free online community at therapyinthegreatoutdoors.com to help you pursue your nature-based therapy dreams too. Are you ready to take action on those dreams? Let's jump in. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Therapy in the Great Outdoors. This week, we are going to do a live business coaching call. I know you all love these. You love peeking behind the scenes of other people's nature-based businesses because it is so helpful when we hear what other people are going through and we realize that we're not alone in this, right? So Jillian Blount is here today. She has been a guest on the podcast before, and you will hear all about some of her challenges that she's having with planning for summer programming, as well as some other logistics of owning land and things like that. But we focus mostly on the summer programming piece. Now, the reason I'm doing this quick little intro before I start talking with her and sharing the session that I had with her is because I think that this conversation gives you a good look at what it is like when you have access to a community of people who are experienced in running nature-based practices, and you can ask the questions that you have in the moment and get help in the moment to make those decisions. I think so many of us stay stuck in indecision for so long about things just because we don't really know where to go, or we maybe don't have that community around us. And the reason I share this is because I am making some changes to my business hive, the used to be year-long group coaching program for nature-based business owners. I have heard from a lot of you that are on the wait list. There's 89 of you or something. I've heard from a lot of you in the feedback that I've gotten when I've asked for feedback that it feels like a long time to commit for a year to any kind of program, really. And while I agree with that, and while everyone in the program currently has said keep it a year because a year is necessary, right? I also understand that it can be a little bit overwhelming for people, or give you a little bit of hesitancy when you are looking to commit to something for that long of a time commitment in our businesses. Because man, a year, it's a short time in the course of a lifetime, but it can be a long time in our present day, everyday lives to stay committed to something. So I think I have found a really great solution for those of you who may have been hesitant to jump in with us into the hive. And what I'm going to do is we will be opening up enrollment for the hive at the end of May for a cohort to start in June and go through December. So I am doing a trial run of the program that only requires a minimum 6-month commitment. After that 6 months, if you would like to stay in the hive, which even with the year-long program, many people have chosen this option. But if you would like to stay in after the 6 months are over, then you can continue to pay a reduced alumni rate to stay inside of the hive for as long as you would like. If you want to stay a year, if you want to stay 2 years. I do have mentors in the program as well who stay in to provide support and encouragement and feedback and mentoring to the people who are newly in the program. So that's another aspect that I really love about this community. I just got off our weekly group coaching call that we do for the hive, and this week in particular was just an incredible, rich conversation about the nuances of nature-based work and running our businesses as nature-based business owners. And we talked a lot about the challenges of marketing to families who have children that have developmental needs. We talked about the challenges of working with our ideal clients and also who is and isn't an appropriate client for nature-based therapy and making some of those really difficult decisions that come up in our nature-based work with children. I could go on and on about all of the very thoughtful things that were shared, and I may share some of those in the future, because even during the call, I was thinking, man, I should ask some of these people to come on the podcast and talk about this topic, because just such wonderful people are in this community. And I feel so grateful to all of you who are listening for letting me do this work, but also especially to the people who have been in my programs. I want to say a huge thank you to you. I love this work that I do, and I'm just so grateful for all of you and amazed at all of you, amazed at what good therapists you are, like how thoughtful you are, how intuitive, how intentional, like just y'all are incredible. So I'm on an I kick. Intuitive, intentional, and incredible. That's a little alliteration for you there. So anyway, I share all of this to say that the Hive will open at the end of May for a June cohort to start for that 6-month time period, and we will see how that goes. I hopefully by the time that this episode comes out, I am giving myself a deadline, because I always like to say deadlines drive decisions, and deadlines also drive us getting things done as well. And I am hoping by the time that you are listening to this, the website will be updated. So you can go to therapyinthegreatoutdoors.com/hive, HIVE, like busy bees working inside of a hive together. That is the nature acronym for this program I run. That website is where you can find all of the information about the Hive. And if you are thinking about joining us, you should get on the wait list there. And then I will be sending out info when we open enrollment so that you will not miss it. Okay, now let's dive into this really helpful conversation with Jillian Blount. You are going to learn so much about how to plan for programs in your nature-based practice. All right, welcome everybody to Therapy in the Great Outdoors. Today we have multi-time guest Jillian Blount is back. So you've been on twice before, or just no, twice?
Twice, yep.
This is your third time. So I think we can confidently say that Jillian is the most frequent guest on the episodes of the TGO podcast thus far. So we did an episode about behavior, which I will link in the show notes for this episode, where Jillian talked about, she's really good about working with children who have what we may call challenging behaviors during nature-based sessions. So we did an episode about behavior, and then she also came on for a live coaching call a while back. I will also link that one. And then now we're doing another live coaching call. And this is something that I love doing and I also love offering it to people that are in my programs, right? Because it's a way for you to get like one-on-one coaching with me, but we're helping the larger audience of nature-based therapists. So you were in the Hive last year and are now in there as a mentor for other nature-based business owners. And you've also done the Contigo approach, right?
Yes, working on
You're
it.
like, yeah, I've known you a long time now. Okay, Jillian, since people may not know you, even though you've been here, introduce yourself, tell us a little about your business, and then we'll dive into helping you with your business.
Okay. I am Jillian Blount. I am CEO, owner, founder. Everyone uses different words of Wild Free Kids OT in Wasilla, Alaska, about 40 miles north of Anchorage. And I have been running it since August 1st of 2022. I've had to take lots of pivots and do lots of things. There's been lots of roadblocks and barriers to getting finally where we are, like the new news.
Yes. Share the new news with everyone. This is.
Yes, we just bought 104 acres, about 15 minutes from my house in the middle of the city. I am like beyond excited. Like it hasn't really hit me yet, even though I've driven around it, checked it out, and was there yesterday or Tuesday on our Hive call. Yeah. So after lots of barriers and lots of things in the way, it feels finally like things are on track in that way. I've seen kids outside in parks and other community
Yeah.
locations, their house, but not everybody wants me at their house. And that's the biggest
Yeah.
piece. So
I
yeah,
think
that's where
that's a
we are.
good I think that's a good thing to address here for people who are listening too, is that you can do nature-based therapy anywhere. You can do it in a
Mhm.
kid's backyard, you can do it on a school playground, but there is something very special and very exciting about being able to create your own kind of space in nature for kids. And it's so exciting that you're doing that.
Yeah,
So we were talking before we hit record about the complexity, and you alluded to that when you just introduced yourself, of there have been a lot of roadblocks, it's been really hard, and I think that's the whole purpose of this podcast, is to help
mhm.
people in that process. I think a lot of us start out with these starry-eyed dreams of nature-based practice
Right,
being so amazing, and it is. And also there are lots of challenges in nature-based practice that I think if you're not ready for them, they can completely derail you, honestly.
right.
So we had talked a little bit about before we hit record, those feeling a little overwhelmed with all the things you have to do as a business owner. So what I want you to do to frame this call, so it's really hard to address like a million different things in like a 30-minute live coaching call. So I want to focus on one thing, but to help you narrow down what you want to focus on, do a little bit of external processing, i.e., talking about what's on your mind right now in the business. You've been in business a year and a half. You just bought all this land. You just extended an offer to someone to work with you, your first
Mhm.
employee. We didn't mention that, but I know that. Or two employees. You
Well,
extended
second
two
employee.
offers. Your second employee. Okay.
Yeah. What? Balloons?
I don't know
Sorry.
why. It's the weirdest thing, Jillian. This happened to me the other day as well. Random balloons come up on my video. I don't know why. So, y'all, if you're watching this on Zoom on YouTube, you just saw this. If you're listening on audio, for some reason lately, when I've been on video, randomly, if I'm excited about something, balloons will just come up. I don't know if AI is listening to me. Balloons just flew around my head on my video. It's so weird. Celebratory balloons. This is strange. Okay. You were on the call the other day when that happened to me, weren't you?
I don't
When it happened to
remember.
me on our coaching call. It was so weird. And it wasn't even in Zoom, it was in Butter, the other platform we
Weird.
use. Very strange. Anyways, okay. That being said, we might have to edit this podcast a little bit. If you guys are listening, this means I decided it was funny to leave this in and I didn't edit it out. Okay. So all of these really exciting things. So your
Mhm.
extended offers to two employees. I didn't know that. And so basically I want you to share with everybody what's on your mind right now as the business owner and what do you want to get clarity on before the end of this call?
A lot of like salary and hiring, volunteers, like all that stuff that's surrounding all of those aspects of expanding and growing.
Oh,
And then, because it's hard right now to hire people up here. When you
yeah.
go and search for a job up here, everyone is hiring. And to be competitive is like almost easier because I don't have a building that I have to pay for and all this
Right.
overhead and all these like non-productive employees. I do have one employee, so like second employee is what
Yeah.
I meant, I think. So we extended offer to another person, and just navigating that is interesting. It's just been a journey. I
Yeah.
mean, what I'm comfortable with and not comfortable with, and what we can offer somebody and not offer, and excuse me, not trying to compare to anyone else, because you can see everybody's and they keep upping their salary,
Yeah.
upping and upping. And sometimes we just can't compete with benefits and things because we are so small.
Yeah.
So there's that piece also. And then with the new property that we just purchased, I that opens up so many new doors. However, it's 104 acres. We can only build on two, and the 2 acres are in a really busy street, and we have to get permits and all this stuff to build a driveway and a parking lot, which is very
Okay.
ironic and sounds very like nature-based. So we have to do all these things, but we can't have people parking on the street. It's so busy. It's not
Okay.
safe. It's not safe.
Okay.
But because it's so large, there's another access point, but that can't have vehicles on it. We can't build on that or put permanent structures because 102 acres are in a conservation easement. We didn't set that up. It was set up like 12, 13 years ago.
Okay.
And so there's certain things we can do there. There's things we can't do. But that's why I was parked on Tuesday or for the call, was we might be able to access it there for the time being until we get all this stuff figured out. It's also still winter and we have a lot of snow and we could have more snow coming. And so like it's just we have to have it surveyed in order to know where the driveway is. And because our not when I like ATVs and all this stuff and snowmobiles, I'm from Wisconsin,
Yeah.
so I say snowmobiles have easement access, like they're going to be over that driveway. So there's a lot of things to consider, which make everything a little bit more complicated. And then I wanted to do summer camps at the other location that I was going to be able to do because it's such a need up here. There's a ton of summer camp activities, but they're not always geared for kids with special needs or kids who need a
Right.
little bit extra support. I know I'm late to the game. I'm super late to the game with this. And I already have space at a park reserved, but we have this land. So it's a lot right now. But I
Yeah.
think I need to think about the camps and what that looks like. And I have my 15-year-old daughter has agreed to help me this summer when she can.
Okay.
And my husband works for me, so he's agreed to be another adult there in case the numbers get too big. Yeah, it's a lot. And so
Okay. So it sounds like there is a lot to do on this land and you can't use the land right away.
we just can't use the portion that is a limited development zone because we have to build the driveway and parking lot there to get us off that busy street. But
Yeah.
we could use another side of it, but we can't put any permanent things on there. So there's pros and cons to
Okay, but
both
can families,
aspects.
my question is, can
Yes.
families access that land right now? Do you have a place for them to park and drop off their children in order for you
No,
to use the land? That's what I'm
no.
saying.
Yep,
So
gotcha.
don't worry about that right now. I think the land is like awesome, but it's a very long term. You're going to launch programs there once you get all the permitting done, the parking lot done,
Right.
the access for the families done. This is like year one of a 10 to 20-year plan in your business. So I'll never forget. I talked to Iris Kimberg, who's like a veteran business coach for therapy entrepreneurs. And I talked to her like really on in my business. And I had maybe been in business like 5 years or something. And she was like, "Oh, you're a little bitty baby business." And I was like, "I've been doing this 5 years, like 5 whole years." And she's, "Whatever. I've been doing this 30 years." Like she didn't say that. She wasn't mean about it. But I think you have to keep that perspective, right? Like you're an itty bitty baby
Yeah.
business right now.
Yeah.
And it's great that you got the land, but if the land is distracting you from getting camp set up and doing camp this summer to actually bring money into your business, that is not a good thing.
Right.
Like you have to be able to do both. You have to be able to like work on the land project and know that's a long-term thing, but focus on the revenue producing stuff right now in the business, which is getting summer camp up and running.
Yeah.
Because we're in March and you're right, it's a tight window to plan
Yeah.
camp if you're
Well,
just now starting.
and
So,
our summer is so short
yeah.
and quick and fast. And last summer was so cold and rainy. We had one day in Anchorage of 70. It was a record. That's a big part of it. It feels shorter because of that.
Okay, so what are you thinking for camp? Like, how many weeks of camp are you thinking? I love that you have your husband and daughter to help you because that saves with
Oh
staffing. You
yeah.
could do
Oh
really
yeah.
small groups and you don't have
Hmm.
to worry about, oh no, I need to get a student or I need to hire someone to help. So, what are you thinking? So, we're recording this on like March 7th,
7.
right? This will probably come out in April. But what are you thinking right now for how many weeks of camp are you thinking? What size are you thinking? Like you said, you have
Right.
a location, so you must have some of this mulling in
Yes.
your brain.
I was thinking like 2-hour blocks, and I have 8-week chunks already in my brain figured out just because we have to go back to Wisconsin again this summer
Okay.
for my grandpa's thing, but then trying to mix in 4th of July in there too. So giving people a natural break. And
Okay.
so I had figured out, and I can't do like a Monday through Thursday thing because I see other kids already.
Okay.
So I was thinking like one day a week, 2 hours, but I don't even know if that could be considered camp or what I should call it. But I already had, I wish I had I had post-it notes, and I know some people don't like
I
that.
wouldn't call that camp.
No,
I wouldn't
no,
call that camp.
either. It's
For,
not.
for
So,
marketing, I wouldn't call that camp because
gotcha.
when you say camp for families, they think of a day camp. Like
Right.
parents naturally think of a day camp. When you say summer camp,
Mhm.
that basically means like Monday through Friday or Monday through Thursday or some kind of like consistent weekly schedule, I think is what parents think of for camp. So I think you should call it like summer programming or summer services or summer weekly nature groups, whatever you're going to market it as, right? You need to name whatever you're
Yeah,
doing, what will be
right,
consistent with what families expect. So I wouldn't call it camp. If you're thinking about what you're thinking about doing is like a weekly group, essentially.
right. Yeah. Because that's kind of
So
that's what's had to evolve after I realized how much time I
sure.
had and space.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think you could call it summer or summer weekly groups. Some people use the word intensive. I don't.
Yeah, people
It's
don't like
funny.
that.
I've heard feedback from parents that like they don't want it to be too intense.
Hmm.
No, it just means it's an intensive time for therapy, but
Right.
even doing a once a week group, I don't think I'd call it that. I would
No.
call more like a summer camp that, like where you're doing it Monday through Friday for 5 hours. We call ours a OT summer camp intensive because it is 20 hours a week of OT in a week. You're looking at doing a weekly group for the summer, which completely changes my opinion that it's too late to be doing this. This is very different than planning eight
Okay.
weeks of summer camp at the beginning of March. Where are you stuck then? Are you stuck with marketing? Are you stuck with
Um,
where are you stuck?
maybe marketing how many kids, because I have two, now that I remember, I have two time slots that would work for my current schedule. And just trying to, if I offer it only to the families, first, if I offer it to the families that I see, but then a lot of them are, I get paid by insurance, so Medicaid, Blue Cross, all those kinds of things. And there's limitations that I can do even with that. And I go, do I continue with my schedule and offer it to other people and it's
Okay.
cash pay? Or do I say, hey, if you're going to use insurance, like maybe that's where I'm stuck, is who
Yeah.
is this offered to?
Yeah. So the first thing in my mind is this is good because this is something I think that will help a lot of people. And it is something that requires a lot of thoughtfulness and like problem solving around because there's pros and cons of each side. My first thought initially is that this is not what my practice does, but that you don't call camp therapy. You just call it
Like
like
enrichment or something.
enrichment group, a
Yeah,
nature enrichment group or something like that,
that's what I
so
was
that
thinking.
you're not confusing people.
Right.
And traditionally in my now you may know for your payers like what they would pay, but in my experience the group code for therapy is an untimed code, and in California we would get reimbursed $8 per child for a group no matter how long it is. It could be a 15-minute group, it could be a 3-hour group. You get $8, which I have just I have felt like my refusing that is a total, I'm just saying no, that is not acceptable. That we will
Yeah.
get paid $8 for a child to be in our groups. The other way that people do it, and I do think is ethical, is you enroll the 4 kids, you have the group for 2 hours, and you bill half an hour per kid,
Mhm.
assuming
Yeah.
that you are ethically spending at least 23 minutes per
Right.
child focused on their goals, their needs, which I think is fair to say that in the course of a 2-hour group, if you have 4 children and an OT there, that you would realistically be giving them that level of attention and
Right.
individualized support. I think that's totally ethical to do. It does limit your group size, but you'd have to do some math around, do the numbers work out, right? What will Medicaid pay for a half hour of therapy times 4 kids? Would it make more sense to just charge everyone a flat fee of whatever and it's just a cash-based service, right?
Right.
It's not a therapy service. You'd be calling it an enrichment group. Because the challenging thing, and I think people who are listening, I'm thinking of them too right now, that
Mhm.
you have to be very careful with insurance and Medicaid contracts. Like you have to make sure that you are not like offering someone a cash pay therapy service and you're saying that I'm not going to take your insurance for this one service that I offer that's therapy, right? My understanding is, and you would know, Jillian, better than me probably, if you're under an insurance contract, you have to honor that if that person has that insurance, you need to take that insurance as reimbursement for your therapy services. But if you stipulate that they are enrichment groups, like nature-based developmental enrichment groups or whatever. That's too wordy of a way to call it, but too long of a title. I'm known for my very long titles for things, so don't listen to me, even though I do love naming things. So I do wonder, maybe we could do some of that math here. So what would you get reimbursed from? Because I know you see a lot of Medicaid kids, so maybe that's the easier one to do. What would you get reimbursed for kids? What do you get for a half an hour of therapy?
It depends on what code we use. It could be anywhere from, hold on, I gotta do some math.
Let's do an average. What's the
Yeah,
average you would get paid?
for half an hour, about $100, about
Jeez.
100. And
It's like it's Alaska rates, y'all. It's amazing. It's
that's
amazing.
that's a low amount. There's one
For a
code we
half
get,
an hour, not for an hour.
not for an hour.
Okay,
There's
because
one,
everyone should know that in California, it's $11 a unit, so $44 per hour for a therapist to see a child for 97530, which is like therapeutic activities or whatever. 97150 group is $8 untimed. so
yeah.
so this is an example of how in your
Mhm.
area you should know what the rates are, and Medicaid rates are a good thing because they're publicly available. You can look them up, right?
Yep.
It's a good way to get a handle on whether it would make sense for your business to go cash pay or insurance based. Jillian is in an area, you're in an area where it makes sense to bill Medicaid, and you can see a wide variety of kids then, right? Like
Yeah.
we all want that as therapists. I wish that every state was like Alaska because we all want to be able to see the kids who are in the most need and who don't have the money to pay for services. But unfortunately, that is not fiscally possible in every state in the US. So Alaska's wonderful. We should all move there if we want to be nature-based OTs and serve kids on Medicaid. That is what we've learned from this podcast. Okay, moving on. $100, let's say $100 for half an hour. So for 4 kids to be in a small group, you could get $400 on average. Okay. So can you make that amount if you have, let's say, 6 kids in a group and you bill the families directly for an enrichment service, right? So 400 divided by 6, would that be, like $60 a session? I don't know, like a little over $60 a session, right? Almost 70, 65 maybe.
Yeah.
Basically, I think you need to do some mapping out of how much time you spend
Yeah.
invoicing Medicaid, documenting, writing goals, all the things that you have to do for therapy services, right? Versus if you run it as an enrichment service, then you don't have any of that. It's pretty much like you plan the group. You don't have to, you're documenting attendance maybe just for your own liability purposes, but you're not having to document on goals, and you can treat it more as just like an enjoyable time for the kids. And you're not having to do all the documentation afterwards for every single kid. So it saves you time. You could maybe enroll a few more kids and then make it less work on your end at the same time. But I think you really would have to write out. You really would have to do some like writing out of how much time do you actually spend doing doing therapy with 4 kids versus doing an enrichment group maybe with 6 or 7. We personally, in my practice, we don't enroll our therapy camps, which are like 20 hours a week. So it's a little bit of a different model, but we don't enroll our camps beyond 7 kids, and generally the 7th kid we enroll to 6, and then if there's a sibling or something that wants to come with their sibling, then we would enroll them. And we have 3 adults, so we have 2 fieldwork students and then we have an OT running it. So that seems to be a good amount of kids for therapy, but maybe for enrichment you could do more. I just don't know if the needs would be high enough. That the thing that concerns me is that because we're therapists and we're marketing to people who have children who do have developmental needs, we tend to get kids that have higher needs in our programs. So
Right.
if you market an enrichment service, you still are going to be attracting the people who want an OT to be with their kid, who want an OT to be leading the group because they know that we're skilled, or a therapist. If you're listening and you're not an OT, this still applies. Like they want your expertise, right? So the challenge is typical summer camps can just enroll to 20 kids and have 4 or 5 staff there because they're not attracting kids that have more developmental needs, right? So we always
Right.
have to be thinking about the needs of the kids coming in, even if we're doing those enrichment services, because you want to make sure that you're appropriately staffed so that you don't have safety concerns going on, honestly. So I think you can mitigate some of that with your intake forms, just making sure. But a lot of times, even on those intake forms, I think even when you say the things about the safety things, like your child needs to be able to be safe in the woods, this is what we say on mine, without an adult within arm's reach. That is, your child has to be able to be safe in the woods within eyesight, but not in arm's reach of an adult because we're not staffing for 1-to-1, right? You can say that, but kids come to camp and the context is different, right? It's all new, there's different people, and maybe they're not safe in the context of your services out in nature, okay, in wild Alaska. Okay, I just was
No.
pontificating there. So, I think my question for you is, what's sitting well with you? What do you think you want to do for your services, I should say, this summer? Is enrichment feeling in your gut like what you want to do, or do you want to go the therapy route?
I feel like enrichment is a little bit better just because we have so many other things in the
Hmm.
background. But then I can see more kids and get them out doing the things and experiencing something that, because I know a lot of them have really bad experiences with
Mm.
other summer camps and other things.
Yep.
At least that's the feedback that I've been given. And that might be what I have to do to start out because it's not a camp. It's more enrichment because it's
Yeah.
weekly and it's not intensive.
Yep.
That word.
I
Um,
love, so to me, like listening to you say that in my brain, I was like, yeah, that I think she's headed down the right. There's no right answer here. It's like
yeah,
whatever your practice wants to do. But in my brain, it makes logical sense from a business perspective because the primary reason being that we always talk in the hive about how it's easier to keep a client than it is to find a new one, right? And so if you already have all of these clients that you're seeing and that your employees are going to be seeing, or your employee and future employee are going to be seeing. So to be able to invite them to an experience that is supplementary to the weekly
right.
therapy that you're doing with them
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense because they already know you, they love you, and they will be able to layer. It's a layer on top of
Mhm.
what they're already getting with you. My question, I think, that comes to mind is, what is the ratio in your practice of Medicaid to private insurance? Because my one concern is that
Yeah.
people with Medicaid may truly not be able to afford, which in your case, you could do scholarships, whatever that you'd want to do, but I want your business to still be, I want it to be worth your time to be offering the service as well. So what's,
It's 90, almost 90% Medicaid.
okay.
And off Medicaid, if parents have other insurance or caregivers have other insurance, Medicaid is always secondary.
Yeah.
That, but the other part is because I see a lot of kids who've been adopted or are in foster care, like they get automatic that they have Medicaid. Not always, it's not always the case. But
But, that the important thing there is that family might actually have the ability to pay for, right? They're not getting
right,
Medicaid because they are low income, which is
right.
partially the people who get Medicaid. But Medicaid is also for kids in the foster system, kids who've been
Mhm.
adopted. There's a lot of
Yeah, there's a lot of
segments of Medicaid here in the US that like the kids may get Medicaid, but their adoptive family may actually be able to pay a little bit of money for an enrichment service, right? Do you feel like, I guess with this conversation, I guess my question would be, do you feel like enough of your current clients would be able to afford the service you offer? So if you're going to enroll, let's say you're going to do to 6 kids just for an easy, even number, and you're going to offer 2 time slots during the week. Do you think you have 12 families on your current caseload who would be able to swing whatever you think you would charge for that?
I think so. It's
Okay.
possible. I'd have to reflect on that more,
Yeah, sure.
but it's possible.
Yeah. And then because if you fill even 8 of those spots with current kids, then you just reach out to your email list, which we've
Mhm.
been talking about being very important also inside the hive lately. I'm laughing because I just shared on Instagram today, like my own tendency was like to post on social media that camp was open. I'm like, wait a second, I forgot to email the list. What is wrong with me? I've been doing this for 8 years. I should know that I'm supposed to email my list first. So make sure you have an email list, nature-based business owners. But you could email your list because that includes people that may not be your customer yet, right? Like
Mhm.
they're just people
Right.
who have said they're interested in your service. You email them that you're doing a nature enrichment group. And I think that could be a really good marketing
Yeah.
time for you, right? Like kids who aren't in therapy yet, but the parents just want to test out and see who you are. And it's a relatively like low commitment, right? Are you going to do, how many weeks were you thinking to do for these
Um,
groups?
8 weeks is
Okay.
what I figured out.
Yep. So
We
that's
might.
great. That's like a
Mhm.
good chunk of time, right? That they could come 8 times. It's not too overwhelming, but it's just a short-term commitment to just see what Wild Free Kids OT is about. So
Yeah.
I think you could easily find like other people in the community just by word of mouth from the people that would sign up for it to fill a few of those extra spots if you don't have 12 people on your caseload right now that would be interested in it. I don't think that's hard. That would not be a hard sell to do,
Right.
especially as enrichment, because it could really be open to any kid who maybe had OT in the past and graduated from OT and then their parents are just like, "Oh, it'd be good for them to go and be in a social group for a few weeks."
Right.
I think that could be a really great thing to offer. So, makes
Yeah.
sense to me.
Okay. Okay.
And I don't think would it be ideal to have everyone enrolled right now in March? Yes. But I don't think to fill 2 small groups per week for the summer for 8 weeks. It's a tight timeline for planning, but it's very different than camp is a lot of work. Doing 5 days straight of multiple hours a day of programming, it's a lot of work. And so I think the way that you're going about your summer programming, doing these groups is a good strategy. And then you save the week longs for when you get your parking lot and your driveway access and all the things you need on your 104 acres, where you can have the tree stump circle and a fire pit
I
and like a
know.
little shelter set up and like all the things. And then you can start a forest school and let people rent your property. And
I
it's going to
know.
be so great. I have so
Mhm.
many ideas for you, Jillian.
I know. I
I'm
I
just kidding.
I
You might
have
not want to do any of that, but it's what I
no.
dream about.
I have so many friends in the area who like are nature based, but they're not
Yeah.
OTs.
Yeah.
And I like called someone on the way home. I was like, "Hey, guess what?" And she's, "We're gonna have to talk."
Yeah.
We kids are on spring break. We have a really long spring break because the Arctic Winter Games are here this spring
Okay.
break. And so a lot of people are helping with that, and they're not available until like March 16th. I'm like, yes, after March 16th, let's get together
Yay.
because we have all this space for people to recreate and utilize.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Yeah,
Yay.
yeah.
Okay. Do you feel like you got some clarity?
Yes, a lot. Thank you. Nice focus. And it allows me now to think about, because I think sometimes I work backwards. Like I get everything and then I try to figure out the logistics, and I can't always do that with this. I have to keep it simple, but it's not always simple.
Yeah.
I
So,
know.
what are your
Yeah.
next steps? What do you need to do after this call? What are your takeaways?
So I am going to figure out some numbers and look at the billing. I think we get like $22-ish for each group code for each Medicaid kiddo. So I know
Okay.
$8. We're like 4 times more than what you use. But just trying to think of a good mix and numbers, and I just have to do some numbers, and I'll ask my husband because he's my numbers guy.
Yep.
He'll have some good ideas with that, and just try to not sit on Canva too long and make something look really pretty, but like,
Yeah.
because
Waste of
that's,
time.
yeah, a
Yeah.
waste of time. But trying to figure out some numbers and starting to offer it and think about who would be good, um, in which group and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you need a deadline too before we hop off. I think you need a deadline for when you're going to email your current customers about this. So, when do you think you'll be ready to do that?
Oh my gosh.
March 7th right now. And when do you want groups to start? June or July?
Um, I was thinking like mid-April, honestly, but
Mid-April to let people know
but
about it?
to start because I was thinking about doing 2 different sessions, but
Oh, wait.
I
So
don't,
you were going to start these groups in mid-April?
yeah, which I don't think I'm
Okay.
going to be able to do. So
Yeah, no,
after,
your
no,
your timeline is too short on that. I
Hmm.
wouldn't. I think
Cross
that
those
would be
out.
very stressful.
Yeah,
And also not a summer. I guess you
I know.
I think you confused me by calling it summer
I
camp
did.
initially. What you want to do is start groups, is what. But yeah, so if you were going to do mid-April to mid, it would be to mid-June. So you're talking
Mhm.
mid-June to start, which I think is a more doable timeline.
Yeah.
So when do you think you're going to be ready to decide how you're going to structure this and reach out to your email list of people or even your current clients?
Yeah.
Actually, I think current clients should have first go. We usually open enrollment for our current clients for about a week and we give them a deadline. We talk about this a lot in the Hive too. Deadlines drive decisions, everyone. Give people deadlines. Whenever you have a service that you're providing, you're like, nobody's applied. It's, did you give them a deadline? No. Like, that's always the case, right? We always forget. So, giving people a deadline. So, your current clients, you reach out to them, you give them a deadline of 1 week to have priority registration in the group. And then you open it to your email list for another maybe week for a deadline. And then you open it to the public. And that's when you should post on social media because that's your last ditch effort to get the word out. So, when do you think you'll know what you want to offer in order to tell your current clients? I think the sooner the better. So give me a date for that.
Yeah. I was thinking like end of March. I don't have a calendar in front
Okay.
of me.
Okay. So by March, so we're just going to say by March 31st. By March 31st, you're going to send an email out to your current families with what the offer is going to be for this summer. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
And then a week after that, you can send out to the email list. And if you get it done sooner, then great. But at least that deadline, and that's perfect because that's the end of Q1. That's I'm going to be like in the Hive calls talking about our Q1 goals and did we meet the Q1 goals? So that will be a good little can follow up with you there.
Okay. Yeah. There we go.
But
Oh,
I
that's
think that's
good.
a totally
Okay.
doable goal for you to do that by the end of March. So
Yeah.
that's good. Yay.
Okay.
I'm so excited for you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thanks. Me too.
Jillian, for being
Yeah.
a frequent guest. And
Of course.
if anyone wants to do one of these live calls, if you're listening, this is not just for people that are in my programs. I do these for free. They're just to like people that are willing to come on live and share a business conundrum that they have. And it's like free to help everyone in their business. So I'm very thankful to you, Jillian, for being vulnerable as usual and honest and just like being willing to go there. So
Yeah.
thanks for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining me today for Therapy in the Great Outdoors. If you want valuable advice as you start or grow your nature-based pediatric practice, get my free ebook, The Nature-Based Practice Roadmap. It is a guide to help you focus and avoid costly mistakes as you start or grow your outdoor work with children. In it, I share the 4 stages of nature-based practice, what you need to focus on and common mistakes to avoid in each stage, plus a checklist of specific action steps for you to take at each stage in the process. Get it at therapyinthegreatoutdoors.com/roadmap. So until next time, get outside, connect, reflect, and enjoy therapy in the great outdoors.